I'm gonna sit cross-legged. Let's get comfortable. When I first started knitting, I was so excited because one of the main reasons we knit or crochet or do crafty things is so that we can make items for people that we love. And I love my mama so much, so I wanted to make her something very special. One Mother's Day, I decided to make my mom a beautiful pink shawl, and I spent weeks and weeks working on it, and I was so excited and so proud to give her this thing that I had made. And she was, of course, so grateful and excited, and she loved it so much. She's so cute. Hi, Mom. And so then it was really hilarious because since I didn't know what I was doing, because I was a new knitter, I had actually substituted bamboo yarn, which is very slippery and it was very drapey, for a yarn the pattern recommended, which was, have more structure. So it started oozing and growing, and she said she had left it hanging on the end of her bed and it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And so we joked, even to this day, we still joke that I didn't actually knit her a shawl, I knit her a volleyball net. So if she ever wants to play volleyball, she has a net at the ready, but she still has it and she loves it so much. And I learned my lesson on substituting yarns in a project. So to help you avoid similar hilarious knitting disasters, here are 6 tips to ensure your success when substituting yarns in your knit and crochet patterns. Tip number 1, you're gonna wanna get a yarn that is the same weight as the pattern calls for. And by weight, I mean the thickness of the strand, not how much the yarn actually weighs. For example, in our company, we have yarn that ranges from our alpaca silk lace, which is the thinnest, all the way up through our buttery bulky, which is currently the thickest yarn that we offer. Different companies have different ways of naming this. Some people use names and words like we do. Some use numbers like 0 through 7. Whatever it is, you just want to make sure you get the same weight. If you're unsure how to compare different weights of yarn, another strategy is to compare the yards per ounces or the meters per gram. Here are 2 fingering weight yarns, so they're the same weight. This is our Sincere sock yarn, which has 437 yards per 100 grams. This is Cash silk sock yarn, which has 410 yards per 100 grams. Since those are pretty similar in yards per grams, you would be okay to substitute one for the other in most patterns. The second thing I would love to talk to you about is fiber content. It is really important to choose a yarn that has a similar fiber content to the one recommended in the pattern. Each fiber and fiber blend has different characteristics. For instance, 100% wool yarn is very stretchy, it's bouncy, it's elastic, it's going to hold its shape really nicely. On the other hand, a yarn like a 100% silk yarn is not going to be stretchy, but it is going to have a nice bit of shine and drape. 2 totally different yarns, and you would need to take the different characteristics into consideration if you're wanting to switch yarns in your project. This is especially important for items that need to retain their shape, like socks. If a pattern calls for 100% superwash merino wool, which is very stretchy, it's bouncy, and it retains its shape nicely, so those socks are going to actually stay on your foot, and you opt for a 100% silk yarn, you're not even going to be able to fit them over your heel, and if you could, they're just not even going to stay up on your ankle. They're going to droop, they're going to puddle, they're going to stretch out of shape, and it's just not going to work at all, and you're going to end up having volleyball nets on your feet instead of socks. On the other hand, if the pattern that you're knitting calls for 100% silk yarn, silk has gorgeous drape and sheen, and it just flows and puddles really nicely. So you're gonna wanna choose a yarn that is really similar to that. You could use a wool yarn, but it's not gonna have the same sheen or drape. It could still be lovely, it's just gonna be different. So that's just something to keep in mind. The third thing you're gonna wanna consider is the stitch pattern. Does the pattern have cables or lace? Maybe it's got simple stockinette or garter stitch. All of this matters when you're deciding if you're going to switch yarns in your project. For instance, some yarns do better with cables and really make those cable stitches pop. I have a couple examples to show you today. This is our Ella top in our alpaca silk DK yarn, and look at this absolutely gorgeous cable panel running down the center. It's so beautiful, and the yarn really lends itself well to making those stitches just boing, pop right out at you. Have a look at this beautiful McFadden cardigan. Oh my gosh. This one is really gorgeous in our Leicester worsted weight yarn. Look at that cable panel running down the back. It just jumps out at you. It's almost 3D. It's so beautiful. It's really excellent for cables. On the other hand, have a look at this Barristan beanie. This is a gorgeous pattern, a fun little beanie in our Cash silk sock yarn, but you can see that the cables on this one are a little bit more subdued. They go into the background a little bit and they don't pop out quite as much as the other other yarn bases. Some yarns lend themselves really well to lace work. If you are knitting a lace weight pattern, you want to make sure and get a yarn that is going to block really beautifully, because when you've done all that work, you want all those gorgeous stitches to really stay open and just be absolutely gorgeous. So you just want to make sure that your yarn is suitable for that type of work. So this leads me to step number 4, which is really important, and that is, if possible, and if you have the yarn in hand, you want to knit a gauge swatch. Use the recommended needle size in the pattern. This is going to be really helpful in helping you to know the characteristics of the yarn with that pattern. It's going to show you how the yarn drapes. Is it stretchy? Does it retain its shape? Is it good with cables and lace or whatever the pattern calls for? Doing a small little swatch before you jump into your big project is going to let you know in advance if you want to use that yarn for that particular pattern. Step 5 is very exciting, and it's all about color. Here's the deal. If you love the color that the original pattern was made in, you're going to want to use a similarly colored yarn. And by that, I mean, if it was a solid, then you're going to want to opt for a solid. If the designer used speckles or variegated or whatever it was, and you love that, then you're going to want to use something similar. I want to show you how changing color can really alter the finished look of a pattern. You can see in this beautiful shawl, I have 2 different versions to show you. This one was made in a speckled gradient. You can see it shifts from one color into the next, and you can see it's got some subtle textures, but look how different it looks when it's made in a solid color. Same pattern, nothing was changed, but you can see the different look you get when you use just one solid color on this version. Another thing to consider is color order. In this crochet shawl that I have here, which is so gorgeous, you can see we use different colors, and you might be wanting to use different colors. Maybe you're unsure which order to use them in, how they're gonna look. You have a couple different options. You can just lay out your skeins and see, oh, I like them in this order. Maybe I want to switch these around, set with it, see what you think. Or if you really want to know, what you want to do is try a couple different gauge swatches using the different colors and different orders in those swatches to see which ones you prefer. So that's going to give you a little visual, actual representation of what you're going to get before you make your whole project. And the 6th and final thing I recommend that you keep in mind is the type of garment that you're making. If you're making something that is going to be fitted, let's say you're working on a beautiful hat that you really need to fit someone's head, or you might be making a sweater. You know, I'm addicted to making sweaters, and you really want it to fit, or even an item like a tank top. Anything where fit is crucial, it's going to be really important that you use a very similar yarn to the one that the pattern recommended. If you are making something where fit is not as crucial, perhaps you're working on a gorgeous shawl, maybe you're making a cowl or even a blanket, that type of thing, then you have a lot more flexibility with substituting yarns, and you don't have to be quite as particular about the yarn that you choose for those. Now, I know that was a lot of patterns and information, so we're going to put all of the links to all of that, the yarn, the patterns, and everything in the description box for you. And mainly what I want you to take away from this today is to just express yourself, to try some new things. There's no need to fear. It's just knitting and crocheting. There's no knit and crochet police. Maybe experiment a little bit. You never know what you're going to come up with. Oh, and I wanted to let you know, we try to do a new knit or crochet pattern nearly every week. They are usually free for a limited time only. If you would like to get notified when those go live, sign up for email updates at expressionfiberarts.com, and I will let you know. I'm so thrilled that you were able to join me today. I wish you a marvelous day and a peaceful week. Thank you for joining me, and I'm going to see you next time. Bye-bye.
Did we just go through a second? Wow!
I would like to thank my sponsors. She was so thankful, and it was just blah, blah, blah. Help you to whatever you said. I don't remember. For example, then want to use a similar, what did I say? What you want to look for is the yardage. I would love to help you. If all of this is confusing and you're like, bah! If all of this is confusing and you're like, bah! I'm a duck.
You're not a duck, you're a human.
Patita.
Go ahead.
Don't think that that's what's going to be happening. Bye-bye. Mwah. Mwah. Mwah.